This is going to be our second lesson in the Russia unit, and the big idea for this lesson: Lenin's Russia faces a civil war and implements a new economic policy. The essential questions: what issues confronted Lenin in the first years of the USSR? How did the government and the economy under Lenin differ from pure communism? And how did Lenin's death affect the future of the Soviet Union? I want to highlight two people standing behind Lenin. One is Joseph Stalin, and number two is Leon Trotsky. They're going to have a lot to say in the direction of the USSR after Lenin dies. The aim of the lesson: analyze how the communist state developed under Lenin and identify Lenin's new economic policy. Words to know: Bolshevik, communists led by Vladimir Lenin. Anti-Bolshevik, former Tsarist officers who wanted a return to the monarchy. The Tsarist officers were part of the White Army. Entente, an alliance of Britain, France, and the US. NEP, or New Economic Policy, an economic policy enacted by Lenin which allowed some capitalist for-profit ventures in small business and farming. USSR, or Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, the name given to the former country of Russia. Let's set the stage. After the Bolshevik Revolution, Lenin quickly sought peace with Germany. Russia signed the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk in March of 1918, giving up a huge chunk of its territory and its population. The cost of peace was extremely high, but the communist leaders knew that they needed all of their energy to feed a collection of enemies at home. The Russian Civil War. The Bolsheviks established a secret police called the Cheka to arrest and execute all suspected enemies of the revolution. Thus began the Red Terror. Since the fall of the Kerensky government, anti-Bolsheviks organized forces to oppose the Bolsheviks. This led to the outbreak of the Russian Civil War, which also involved the Entente of Britain, France, and the US. These were forces sent against Lenin. The anti-Bolsheviks, or the White Army, were led by former Tsarist officers who sought a return to the monarchy. The Bolsheviks, or the Red Army, or communists, were led by Leon Trotsky. The execution of the royal family. Following his abdication, Nicholas and his family were placed under house arrest in 3 locations over the following year to protect them from those involved in the Russian Revolution. At 2 a.m. on July 17, 1918, the family was awakened and was told to dress and go to the basement. They were led to believe that this was for their own protection as anti-Bolshevik forces were approaching. Instead, Nicholas, Alexandra, and their children, as well as 4 members of their household staff, were gunned down by an assembled firing squad. The execution of the royal family prevented them from becoming a rallying symbol for counter-revolutionary forces. This is a picture of the room the royal family was executed in and the wall that they stood against when they were all assassinated by a firing squad. The execution of the Tsarist family was needed not only in order to frighten, horrify, and instill a sense of hopelessness in the enemy, but also to shake up our own ranks, to show that there was no turning back, that ahead lay either total victory or total doom. This Lenin sensed well. Leon Trotsky. Red triumph in the Civil War. The Red Army was successful in all theaters of the Civil War. The widespread belief that the white officers were trying to restore Tsarist rule, admittedly not aware that the Tsar had been executed, damaged the popular image of the whites. The success of the Red Army was a tribute to the leadership of Trotsky, who saved the Bolsheviks and their regime. Now we're going to look at Lenin's new economic policy. Lenin followed an economic policy of war communism, which was completely controlled by the Communist Party. This brought the economy to near collapse. Under party control, factory and mine output had fallen. Peasants stopped producing grain, knowing the government was only going to seize it. In 1921, Lenin adopted the NEP, or New Economic Policy, which allowed for some capitalist for-profit ventures in small business and farming. By 1928, food and industrial production climbed back to pre-war levels. This also helped the Soviet economy to recover and raise the standard of living. Lenin always saw the NEP as just a temporary retreat from communism. His successor would soon return the Soviet Union to pure communism. How did the government and the economy under Lenin differ from pure communism? In the government Lenin set up, the Communist Party, not the people, controlled the government. The economy under the new economic policy allowed some capitalist ventures like starting a business and earning a profit. Pure communism does not embrace the new economic policy view. Russia becomes the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, or USSR. In 1922, Lenin's communist government declared the birth of the USSR, or Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, or simply the Soviet Union. All political power, resources, and means of production would belong to workers and peasants. Though it was ruled by a constitution and an elected legislature with universal suffrage, which is voting, in reality it was governed by the Communist Party through its control over the army and the secret police, just like the Tsars of the past. Lenin's death. Lenin survived 2 assassination attempts on his life and 3 strokes by 1923. Lenin died on January 21, 1924 at the age of 54 and lay in state for 4 days, where he was viewed by almost 1 million people. In his honor, Petrograd was renamed Leningrad 3 days later, and he was embalmed in a mausoleum in Moscow. After Lenin's death, there was a power struggle between Leon Trotsky and Joseph Stalin. Trotsky was a Marxist thinker, a skillful speaker and an architect of the Bolshevik Revolution, who urged support for a worldwide revolution against capitalism. Joseph Stalin was a shrewd or clever political operator and behind-the-scenes organizer who cautiously wanted to concentrate on building socialism at home. Stalin isolated Trotsky within the party and stripped him of his membership. Trotsky fled in exile in 1929 but continued to criticize Stalin. The power struggle between Trotsky and Stalin would end when in 1940 a Stalinist agent murdered Trotsky in Mexico. This would also open the door for Stalin to become the next dictator of the USSR. Now let's look at some review questions. Which statement about the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia is accurate? 1. Economic conditions led to political change. 2. Industrialization hindered national development. 3. Goals were achieved by peaceful means. 4. Communist ideals fueled both movements. The answer is 1. Economic conditions led to political change. Lenin's new economic policy, the NEP, A. Permitted some capitalism and profit. B. Eliminated some shopkeepers. C. Limited the amount of grain one could harvest. Or D. Was best described as laissez-faire capitalism. The answer is A. Permitted some capitalism and profit. Which statement best describes the political situation in the Soviet Union immediately after Lenin's death in 1924? A. Popular elections were held to choose a new general secretary. B. The nation adopted a constitutional monarchy. C. A power struggle developed among Communist Party leaders. Or D. Trotsky and his followers assumed full control of the Communist Party. The answer is C. A power struggle developed among Communist Party leaders. Now let's answer our essential questions. What issues confronted Lenin in the first years of the USSR? Lenin confronted anti-Bolsheviks, or the White Army, who were led by former Tsarist officers who sought a return to the monarchy. There was also the unthinkable, the execution of the royal family. How did the government and the economy under Lenin differ from pure communism? In the government Lenin set up, the Communist Party, not the people, controlled the government. The economy under the new economic policy allowed some capitalist ventures the ability to start a business and earn a profit. How did Lenin's death affect the future of the Soviet Union? Lenin's death started a struggle within the Communist Party between Stalin and Trotsky. Stalin would force the exile of Trotsky and become the next leader of the USSR. This is the end of the lesson. Please complete the assignment that goes along with the lesson.